I stood outside my childhood home on Christmas Eve, wearing a thrift store coat and carrying a fake damaged purse. Inside, my family celebrated my sister Madison's promotion to CEO with a $500,000 salary. They invited me specifically to witness this triumph and feel ashamed of my supposed failures. What they didn't know is that I own Tech Vault Industries worth $1.2 billion. I'm about to discover exactly how cruel people become when they believe you have nothing left to lose. The front door opened before I could knock, revealing my mother Patricia in her best holiday dress. Her smile looked practiced, the kind reserved for distant relatives or unwelcome neighbors. "Della, you made it," she said, stepping aside without offering a hug. "Everyone's in the living room. Madison just arrived from the office." I shuffled inside, adjusting my deliberately worn coat. The house smelled like cinnamon and expensive wine with fresh garland draped along the banister. Extended family filled the space, their voices creating a warm buzz that immediately quieted when I appeared. "Look who finally showed up." My father, Robert, called from his leather recliner, barely glancing up from his tablet. "We were starting to think you couldn't get time off from the bookstore." Aunt Caroline approached with her signature concerned expression, the one she reserved for discussing other people's problems. "Della, sweetheart, we've been worried about you, living alone in that tiny apartment, working retail at your age." I nodded meekly, playing my part perfectly. "The bookstore keeps me busy. I'm grateful to have steady work." "Steady work," Uncle Harold repeated with a chuckle, swirling his bourbon. "That's one way to look at it. When I was 32, I was already running my own accounting firm." Cousin Jessica materialized beside him, her real estate success evident in every piece of designer jewelry she wore. "Speaking of success, wait until you hear about Madison's promotion. $500,000 a year, can you imagine?" And here I thought my commissions were impressive. Before I could respond, the sound of heels clicking against hardwood announced Madison's entrance. She swept into the room wearing a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her engagement ring caught the chandelier light, sending sparkles across the wall. "Sorry I'm late, everyone," Madison announced, accepting kisses and congratulations from the assembled relatives. "Conference call with the board ran over. You know how it is when you're making decisions that affect hundreds of employees." She finally noticed me standing by the coat closet, still clutching my shabby purse. "Oh, Della, I'm surprised you came. I know family gatherings aren't really your thing anymore." "I wouldn't miss celebrating your success," I replied quietly. "Congratulations on the promotion." Madison's smile turned sharp. "Thank you. It's amazing what happens when you set real goals and work toward them. Brandon and I are already looking at houses in the executive neighborhood." Her fiancé Brandon emerged from the kitchen, wine glass in hand, and slipped his arm around Madison's waist. "We're thinking something with a home office and guest quarters. Della, you should see the properties we've been touring. The smallest one is 4,000 square feet." "That sounds wonderful," I murmured, watching how they all leaned in to hear about Madison's achievements while positioning themselves to avoid extended conversation with me. Grandmother Rose hobbled over with her cane, shaking her head sadly. "Della, dear, what happened to that bright girl who won the science fair in high school? You had such potential." "Sometimes life takes unexpected turns," I said, maintaining my defeated demeanor. "Unexpected turns," my mother repeated, beginning to arrange appetizers on the coffee table. "That's certainly one way to describe it. Madison, tell everyone about your new office. The photos you showed us were incredible." As Madison launched into a detailed description of her corner office with city views, I observed how the catering staff moved efficiently through the space. My parents barely acknowledged their presence, treating them like furniture. The servers were polite and professional, but I caught the subtle eye rolls when my family made demanding requests without saying please or thank you. The conversation flowed around me like water around a stone. They discussed Madison's corporate achievements, Brandon's law firm partnership track, Jessica's latest real estate deals, and Uncle Harold's retirement plans. When someone occasionally directed a question my way, it carried the tone of obligatory politeness rather than genuine interest. Della works at that little bookstore downtown, my mother explained to a family friend who asked about my job. It's not much, but it keeps her occupied. Books are nice, the friend replied with the kind of smile people use when they can't think of anything encouraging to say. Madison positioned herself near the mantel where my parents had displayed her corporate headshots and recent press clippings. I never expected to reach CEO level so young, but when opportunity knocks, you have to be ready to answer. And some of us are ready, Uncle Harold added pointedly, while others are still figuring things out. The barb hit its intended target, but I absorbed it without reaction. Instead, I watched my family's dynamics, noting how they competed for Madison's attention while collectively dismissing my presence. It was like watching a nature documentary about pack behavior. As the evening progressed, I overheard my parents talking quietly in the kitchen while arranging dessert plates. They didn't notice me standing in the hallway, and their words carried clearly through the open doorway. "Are you sure about tonight?" my father asked. "It seems a bit harsh even for our standards." "She needs a wake-up call," my mother replied firmly. Madison's success highlights how far behind Della has fallen. Maybe seeing the intervention materials will motivate her to make some changes. The whole family's committed to it. Everyone agreed. We can't enable her mediocrity forever. Madison prepared talking points for each person, and we have the employment applications ready. It's time for some tough love. My stomach clenched as I realized they had planned something far worse than simple embarrassment. This wasn't just a celebration of Madison's success. It was a coordinated attack designed to break down what little confidence they believed I had left. They had no idea they were about to humiliate someone who employed over 3,000 people and had built a technology empire from scratch. I slipped back into the living room where Madison was discussing her company's upcoming expansion plans. The family hung on every word, asking intelligent questions and offering enthusiastic support. The contrast with their treatment of me couldn't have been more stark. "Tomorrow's going to be even more exciting," Madison announced, checking her phone. "I'm finalizing a partnership that could change everything." Dinner proceeded with ceremonial precision, each course accompanied by toasts to Madison's achievements. I sat at the far end of the table, picking at my food, while listening to detailed analyses of her career trajectory and future potential. The conversation felt choreographed, as if everyone had rehearsed their roles. After the main course, my father stood and tapped his wine glass with his knife. "Before dessert, we have some special presentations to make." Madison beamed as Uncle Harold retrieved a gift bag from the hall closet. "First, we want to properly recognize our newest CEO," he announced, handing Madison an elegant wooden plaque engraved with her name and title. The family erupted in applause while Madison posed for photos with her award. Brandon took dozens of pictures, promising to frame the best ones for their future home office. "And now," my mother said, her voice taking on a different tone, "we have something for Della as well." Aunt Caroline approached with a much larger bag, her expression radiating forced cheerfulness. "We know you've been struggling lately, sweetheart, so we put together some things that might help." I accepted the bag with trembling hands, playing my role as the grateful but confused family failure. Inside, I found a collection of items that would have been insulting if they weren't so perfectly predictable. Budget planning workbooks, discount store gift cards, and employment applications for entry-level positions at local businesses. "We researched opportunities that might be good fits," Jessica explained, pulling out one of the applications. "There's a receptionist position at my real estate office, and Uncle Harold knows about an opening for a file clerk at his firm." "The important thing is taking that first step," my mother added. "You can't keep drifting through life without a plan." Madison leaned forward, her voice taking on the patronizing tone she probably used with underperforming employees. "I've actually been thinking about this a lot, and I have a proposal. My new position comes with authority to hire an executive assistant. The salary wouldn't be much, maybe $30,000 a year, but it would give you structure and purpose." The family murmured approval of this generous offer, praising Madison's kindness in considering her struggling sister. I clutched the gift bag, forcing tears into my eyes to complete the performance. "That's incredibly generous," I whispered. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Uncle Harold encouraged. "Madison's offering you a chance to be part of something successful instead of hiding away in that bookstore." Grandmother Rose nodded emphatically. "In my day, family helped family. Madison is being very gracious considering." "Considering what?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew. "Well, dear," Grandmother Rose continued, "you haven't exactly made the family proud. While Madison was building her career, you were content with minimum wage work and that cramped little apartment. It's time to accept help from people who know better." Brandon cleared his throat and leaned back in his chair. "Actually, I might be able to help too. My law firm handles networking events, and I could introduce you to some contacts. You'd need to work on your presentation, maybe update your wardrobe, but there might be opportunities for someone willing to start at the bottom." His eyes lingered on me in a way that made my skin crawl, and I realized his offer came with implications that had nothing to do with professional networking. "The timeline is perfect." Madison continued oblivious to her fiancé's inappropriate undertones. "I start my new role January 2nd, and I'll need an assistant immediately. You could give your bookstore notice after the holidays." My father pulled out his phone and began typing. "I'm making notes of everyone's suggestions. We should create an action plan with specific deadlines and accountability measures." "Accountability is crucial," Aunt Caroline agreed. "We can't let emotions override practical decisions. Della needs structure, not sympathy." As they discussed my future as if I were a project to be managed, I noticed how their language had shifted. They spoke about me in third person despite my presence at the table, reducing me to a problem requiring their collective solution. "Has anyone considered what Della actually wants?" I asked quietly. The question seemed to surprise them, as if they hadn't expected me to participate in planning my own life. "What you want and what you need are two different things," my mother replied firmly. "Sometimes family has to make difficult decisions for the greater good." "The greater good," I repeated, testing the phrase. Madison set down her wine glass and adopted her corporate executive posture. "Look, I know this feels overwhelming, but successful people surround themselves with other successful people. You've been isolated too long, making decisions based on limited perspective." "Limited perspective," I echoed. "Exactly," Uncle Harold jumped in. "You're thinking small because your world has become small. Working in retail, living alone, no real social connections. It's not healthy." Jessica nodded sagely. "When I started in real estate, I had to completely change my mindset. Stop thinking like a consumer and start thinking like a business owner. You need that same kind of transformation." "What kind of transformation?" I asked. "Accept reality," my father said bluntly. "You're 32 years old with nothing to show for it. No career advancement, no significant relationships, no assets worth mentioning. Madison is offering you a lifeline." The room fell silent as his words hung in the air. I looked around the table at faces that ranged from sympathetic to impatient, all unified in their certainty that they understood my life better than I did. "There's one more thing," Madison said, her voice taking on the tone of someone about to deliver particularly good news. "Brandon and I have an announcement that makes this family gathering even more special." She stood and took Brandon's hand, her engagement ring catching the dining room light. "We're pregnant. The baby's due in August." The family exploded into congratulations and excited chatter about nursery plans and baby names. In the midst of the celebration, Madison turned to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "This baby will inherit everything worthwhile in the family legacy," she announced. "Since you've chosen not to contribute to our family's success, maybe you could contribute by helping with childcare. It would give your life real purpose." The suggestion hung in the air like a challenge. They wanted me to become the family servant, grateful for the opportunity to orbit around Madison's achievements while contributing my labor to support her growing empire. "I'd be honored to help with the baby," I said softly, maintaining my facade while internally marveling at their audacity. "Wonderful!" My mother clapped her hands together. See how much better things feel when we work together, Della. You could move back home and help with the baby while working as Madison's assistant. It's a complete solution. As they continued planning my diminished future, I realized this intervention wasn't about helping me succeed. It was about ensuring I accepted my place as the family failure, grateful for whatever scraps they chose to offer. They needed me to stay small so they could feel big. The evening was about to take an even more interesting turn. After the intervention presentations, the family migrated back to the living room for coffee and dessert. Madison settled into the center seat, accepting continued congratulations on both her pregnancy and her professional achievements. The conversation naturally gravitated toward her new role in the company's expansion plans. Tell us more about this CEO position. Uncle Harold requested settling into his favorite chair with a fresh bourbon. What kind of company is RevTech Solutions exactly? Madison's eyes lit up with the fervor of someone passionate about their work. We're a technology consulting firm specializing in data analytics and software implementation for large corporations. My promotion puts me in charge of our biggest growth initiative ever. That sounds impressive, Jessica said, but what does it actually mean in terms of revenue and market position? We're positioning ourselves to become a major player in the enterprise technology space, Madison explained. The consulting market is worth billions, and we're targeting Fortune 500 companies that need sophisticated tech solutions. Brandon pulled out his phone and began researching. Madison's being modest. RevTech has grown 300% in the past 2 years. She's been instrumental in landing several major contracts. Speaking of major contracts, Madison said, unable to contain her excitement, I'm about to close the biggest deal in company history. We're talking about a partnership that could double our annual revenue overnight. My father leaned forward with interest. What kind of partnership generates that level of impact? A technology giant wants to use our services for a massive infrastructure overhaul, Madison replied. The contract is worth millions, and the client specifically requested me to handle the relationship. Aunt Caroline set down her coffee cup with a gentle clink. Which company anyone we'd recognize? Madison paused dramatically, savoring the moment before her big reveal. TechVault Industries. The name hit the room like a small explosion. Everyone began talking at once, expressing amazement and asking questions. Even Grandmother Rose perked up in her chair. TechVault Industries. Uncle Harold repeated, immediately typing the name into his phone. Good Lord, Madison, their market valuation is over $1 billion. $1.2 billion, actually, Madison corrected with obvious pride. They're one of the most successful technology companies in the country, and they chose RevTech as their exclusive consulting partner. Jessica whistled low. I've read articles about TechVault. They're incredibly selective about business relationships. How did you manage to get their attention? Professional networking and reputation, Madison explained. Word gets around in the tech industry when you deliver exceptional results. TechVault's team reached out to us specifically because of projects I've managed. Brandon continued researching on his phone, reading aloud from various business publications. Listen to this. TechVault Industries, founded 8 years ago, specializes in proprietary software solutions for enterprise clients. Annual revenue exceeds $400 million. Headquarters in downtown Chicago with subsidiary offices nationwide. $400 million in annual revenue, my father repeated, clearly impressed. Madison, this partnership could transform your entire career trajectory. That's exactly what I'm thinking, Madison agreed. TechVault's owner is famously private, but the executive team I've been working with treats me like a peer. They recognize talent when they see it. I sat quietly in my corner chair, sipping coffee and absorbing every word. They had no idea they were discussing my company, my employees, my revenue streams. The irony was almost overwhelming. What do you know about TechVault's leadership? Aunt Caroline asked. These billion-dollar companies usually have fascinating origin stories. Brandon read from his screen. The founder and primary owner remains anonymous, but business publications describe them as a visionary entrepreneur who built the company from nothing. Most articles focus on TechVault's innovative solutions and company culture rather than personal details about leadership. Anonymous ownership is smart, Uncle Harold observed. Keeps the focus on business results rather than celebrity status. I respect that approach. Madison nodded emphatically. Exactly. TechVault operates with incredible professionalism. Every interaction I've had with their team has been polished and strategic. They're the kind of company that makes RevTech look good by association. When do you finalize this partnership? Jessica asked. Tomorrow, actually, Madison replied. Christmas Day. The TechVault team wanted to meet before the new year, and I wasn't about to let holiday timing interfere with this opportunity. My mother frowned slightly. Working on Christmas seems unusual. Are you sure this company has proper work-life balance? Mom, this is a billion-dollar deal. Madison laughed. I'd work on Christmas morning if they asked. Besides, the meeting is just a formality to sign documents and discuss implementation timelines. Brandon found another article and began reading. TechVault Industries maintains subsidiary operations in over 40 states, including retail partnerships and community investment programs. The company has donated millions to literacy initiatives and educational technology programs. Philanthropy is usually a good sign, Grandmother Rose commented. Companies that give back to communities tend to be ethical business partners. That's what impressed me most during our negotiations, Madison said. TechVault's representatives ask detailed questions about RevTech's community involvement and employee treatment. They're not just interested in profits. Uncle Harold chuckled. Smart business practice. Ethical partnerships reduce legal risks and create better long-term relationships. This TechVault owner clearly understands sustainable business principles. As they continued discussing TechVault's business practices and community reputation, I marveled at how close they came to understanding who they were really talking about. Every charitable initiative they praised, every business decision they admired, every innovative solution they celebrated, I had personally designed and implemented those programs. The meeting location is a bit unusual, though, Madison added almost as an afterthought. Instead of TechVault's main headquarters, they want to meet at some subsidiary address downtown, probably a smaller office space they use for confidential negotiations. What's the address? My father asked. Madison pulled out her phone and scrolled through emails. 327 Oak Street. It's listed as a TechVault subsidiary location, though I'm not sure what kind of operation they run there. My blood ran cold. 327 Oak Street was my bookstore's address. TechVault officially owned the building through a subsidiary corporation, but Madison was about to walk into my workplace expecting to meet with mysterious executives. Oak Street, Jessica mused. That's downtown near the Arts District. Isn't it interesting choice for a tech company meeting? Tech companies often use unconventional spaces for creative brainstorming, Brandon offered. Maybe it's their innovation lab or something similar. Madison shrugged. Whatever it is, I'll be there at 2 o'clock sharp tomorrow afternoon. This meeting represents everything I've worked toward in my career. As the family continued speculating about TechVault's business operations and my sister's bright future, I realized I was facing an impossible situation. In less than 24 hours, Madison would arrive at my bookstore, expecting to meet with TechVault executives completely unaware that her despised sister owned the company she was so desperate to impress. The evening had just become infinitely more complicated. The family's fascination with TechVault Industries prompted an impromptu research session. Brandon connected his laptop to the television screen, and soon everyone was gathered around viewing the company website and news coverage. I watched from my peripheral position as they dissected every public detail about my business empire. Look at this employee satisfaction rating. Jessica pointed at the screen. 97% positive reviews on employment websites. TechVault must have incredible management. Uncle Harold adjusted his glasses to read the smaller text. Average employee tenure is 8 years, and they offer profit-sharing, unlimited vacation, and comprehensive health care. This isn't just a successful company, it's a model employer. The founder clearly understands that investing in people creates better business outcomes, my father observed. Smart leadership philosophy. Madison leaned forward, studying a press release about TechVault's latest software launch. I've been wondering about their decision-making process. Every interaction I've had suggests someone with exceptional attention to detail and long-term strategic thinking. What kind of interactions? Aunt Caroline asked. Contract negotiations were unusually thorough, Madison explained. Most companies focus on deliverables and timelines, but TechVault's team asked detailed questions about RevTech's company culture, employee development programs, and community partnerships. Brandon scrolled to a new page showing TechVault's charitable giving history. They've donated over $15 million to educational programs in the past 3 years. Look at this list of recipient organizations. As he read through the beneficiaries, my heart rate increased. Several organizations on the list received funding through programs I had personally designed, including the Literacy Initiative at my own bookstore. The Riverside Literacy Project. Brandon read, Downtown Chicago Food Bank, Prairie Elementary School Technology Program, Oakwood Community Center After School Program. Those are all local organizations, my mother noted. TechVault's owner must have strong ties to the Chicago area. Grandmother Rose squinted at the screen. That's wonderful. Too many wealthy people forget about their own communities once they achieve success. Here's an interesting article, Jessica said, taking control of the laptop. Business Weekly published a profile last year speculating about TechVault's anonymous founder. Listen to this analysis. She began reading aloud. Industry sources describe TechVault's leadership as methodical, innovative, and intensely private. The company's rapid growth suggests an entrepreneur with both technical expertise and exceptional business instincts. Several competitors have attempted to recruit TechVault's founder through intermediaries, but all approaches have been politely declined. Loyalty is rare in the tech industry, Uncle Harold commented. Most successful entrepreneurs jump between ventures or sell to larger corporations. TechVault's founder seems committed to building something lasting. Madison retrieved her own phone and pulled up TechVault's LinkedIn profile. Their company posts focus on employee achievements and community impact rather than self-promotion, very different from most corporate social media strategies. What about photos of leadership? My father asked. Most companies showcase their executive team. Brandon navigated to TechVault's About page, which featured photos of department heads and senior managers, but conspicuously avoided any images of the primary owner. Just staff profiles for regional directors and project managers. The founder maintains complete anonymity. Smart move, Jessica said. Avoiding personal publicity allows focus on business results. Too many entrepreneurs become celebrities and lose sight of actual company performance. As they continued exploring TechVault's digital presence, I noticed how their research kept circling back to community involvement and employee treatment. Every article review and business profile emphasized the company's ethical practices and long-term thinking. Here's something fascinating, Aunt Caroline announced, reading from a trade publication on her own phone. TechVault has never laid off employees even during economic downturns. They retrained people for new roles instead of cutting staff. That's almost unheard of in the technology sector, Brandon said. Most companies prioritize quarterly earnings over workforce stability. Madison looked thoughtful. During our negotiations, TechVault's representatives asked how RevTech handles employee development during difficult periods. I thought it was an unusual question, but now it makes sense. They're evaluating potential partners based on values alignment, my father concluded. TechVault wants to work with companies that share their approach to business ethics. Uncle Harold nodded approvingly. Madison, you're partnering with exactly the right kind of organization. This relationship could define RevTech's reputation for decades. As they continued their research, Brandon discovered a collection of photos from various charity events TechVault had sponsored. The images showed company representatives presenting large donation checks to local organizations, but the photos were carefully composed to avoid revealing the identity of senior leadership. "Look at this one," he said, pointing to a particularly blurry image from a literacy fundraiser. "There's someone in the background presenting a $50,000 check to the Riverside Library Foundation, but the lighting makes it impossible to see their face clearly." The family passed Brandon's phone around each person, studying the shadowy figure in the photograph. When the phone reached me, I recognized the image immediately. It was from last year's literacy gala, where I had personally delivered funding for expanded programming. "The woman looks young," Aunt Caroline observed when the phone returned to her. "Probably in her 30s. That's impressive leadership for someone so early in their career." Jessica took another look. "The posture and clothing suggest someone comfortable with public speaking, but not interested in personal attention. Very focused on the cause rather than photo opportunities." Madison studied the image intently. "There's something familiar about the silhouette, but I can't place it. Maybe I've seen similar photos from other Tech Vault events." "Familiar how?" my mother asked. "Just a general sense of recognition," Madison replied with a shrug. "Probably nothing specific. Successful women in business often have similar professional presence." Uncle Harold laughed. "Once you're working directly with Tech Vault, you'll probably meet their leadership team eventually. This anonymous founder can't stay invisible forever." "Actually, I'm hoping tomorrow's meeting will provide more insight into company leadership," Madison said. "Major partnerships usually involve senior executives, even if the founder remains private." Brandon closed his laptop and disconnected it from the television. "You're incredibly fortunate, Madison. Tech Vault represents everything RevTech aspires to become. This partnership is like getting mentored by industry legends." "That's exactly how I see it," Madison agreed. "Working with Tech Vault will elevate RevTech's reputation and open doors to opportunities we could never access independently." The family began discussing Madison's career trajectory and the potential long-term benefits of the Tech Vault relationship. They speculated about expansion possibilities, increased revenue projections, and the professional networking opportunities that would inevitably follow. "This could be the beginning of something extraordinary," my mother said, beaming with pride. "Madison, you've positioned yourself to learn from the best in the industry." As they continued celebrating Madison's impending success, I sat quietly absorbing the irony of their enthusiasm. Tomorrow, Madison would discover that her despised sister was the anonymous founder they had spent the evening researching and admiring. The woman they considered a failure had built exactly the kind of company they respected most. The revelation was going to shatter more than just Madison's expectations. As the evening progressed into its final phase, the family's energy reached new heights of celebratory excitement. Madison had become the undisputed center of attention, fielding questions about her future plans and accepting advice from relatives eager to contribute to her success story. "Let's toast properly," Uncle Harold announced, retrieving an expensive bottle of champagne from the kitchen. "This Tech Vault partnership deserves recognition with something better than wine." While he worked on opening the champagne, Madison's phone buzzed with an incoming call. She glanced at the screen and immediately straightened in her chair. "It's Tech Vault," she announced to the room. "I need to take this privately." She stepped into the hallway, leaving the family to speculate about the purpose of the call. I strained to catch fragments of conversation, but Madison spoke too quietly for clear eavesdropping. When she returned after 10 minutes, her expression mixed excitement with slight confusion. "Everything all right?" Brandon asked. "More than all right," Madison replied, though her tone suggested some uncertainty. "That was Sarah Chen, Tech Vault's executive coordinator. She confirmed tomorrow's meeting and provided some additional details." "What kind of details?" my father inquired. Madison consulted her phone notes. "The meeting location is definitely 327 Oak Street, but it's not exactly what I expected. According to Sarah, the building houses multiple Tech Vault operations, including some kind of research facility and community outreach center." "Research facility," Jessica repeated. "That makes sense for a technology company, probably where they develop new software solutions." Sarah also mentioned that Tech Vault's founder specifically requested to handle this meeting personally. Madison continued. Apparently, RevTech's proposal impressed them enough to warrant direct involvement from company leadership. The family erupted in excited congratulations, praising Madison's achievement in attracting personal attention from such a successful entrepreneur. Uncle Harold finally managed to open the champagne and began pouring glasses for everyone. "This is unprecedented," Brandon said, accepting his glass. "Anonymous billionaires don't take personal meetings with potential partners. Madison, you've accomplished something extraordinary." "What else did Sarah tell you?" Aunt Caroline asked. Madison scrolled through her notes. "The meeting is scheduled for exactly 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Sarah emphasized punctuality and mentioned that the founder appreciates direct communication and thorough preparation." "Sounds like someone who values professionalism," my mother observed. "You'll fit right in with their corporate culture." "There was one unusual request," Madison added. "Sarah suggested I bring any family members who might be interested in learning about TechVault's community partnerships. She said the founder enjoys discussing local business relationships." Uncle Harold raised his eyebrows. "Bringing family to a business meeting is unconventional, but if they're genuinely interested in community connections, it could demonstrate RevTech's local roots." "Should we come?" Jessica asked eagerly. "I'd love to meet someone who built a billion-dollar company from scratch." Madison considered the suggestion. Sarah specifically mentioned that the founder values authentic relationships over formal business presentations. Having family support might actually strengthen our partnership proposal. "Where exactly is this meeting location?" my father asked. "We should coordinate transportation and arrival times." 327 Oak Street, Madison repeated. "It's in the Arts District near that little bookstore where Della works. Actually, that's probably convenient for you, Della. You could introduce us to the neighborhood and maybe even show us around before the meeting." My throat constricted as I realized the impossible situation developing. Madison wanted me to guide the family to my own business for a meeting with myself. The irony was becoming almost unbearable. "I'd be happy to help with directions," I managed to say. "Perfect." Madison smiled, the first genuinely warm expression she'd directed toward me all evening. "You could even open the bookstore early tomorrow and let us wait there until meeting time. It would be convenient and show the TechVault team that RevTech has strong local connections." Brandon pulled out his phone again. "I'm curious about this building. Let me see if I can find any additional information about TechVault's operations there." He searched for several minutes while the family continued toasting Madison's success. When he looked up, his expression showed mild confusion. "This is interesting," he said. "The building registration lists TechVault Industries as the primary owner, but public records show it operating as a bookstore and community center. Very unusual for a technology company. Maybe they're using retail operations as research facilities," Jessica suggested. "Some companies test new technologies in real-world environments before wider implementation." Madison nodded thoughtfully. "That would explain why they're interested in community partnerships. Direct interaction with local businesses and customers provides valuable market research." "Della," Uncle Harold said, turning toward me, "you work in that area. Have you noticed any unusual technology installations or research activities in nearby businesses?" I shook my head carefully. The neighborhood is pretty traditional. Most businesses focus on arts crafts and local services. Nothing that seems particularly high-tech. "Well, tomorrow we'll get answers to all our questions," my mother said, raising her champagne glass. "To Madison's success and the beginning of an exciting new chapter." The family toasted enthusiastically while I struggled with the growing complexity of my situation. In less than 18 hours, I would need to reveal my identity to people who had spent the evening treating me like a charity case, while simultaneously celebrating their respect for the company I had built. Madison's phone buzzed again, this time with a text message. She read it quickly and smiled broadly. "Sarah just confirmed that tomorrow's meeting will include a comprehensive tour of TechVault's local operations," she announced. "The founder wants to demonstrate their commitment to community investment and long-term business relationships." "A personal tour from a billionaire entrepreneur," Grandmother Rose marveled. Madison, this is turning into something much bigger than a simple business meeting. I know. Madison replied, her excitement barely contained. Sarah mentioned that the founder rarely takes time for extended discussions with potential partners. This represents a level of interest that could transform RevTech's entire future. As the family continued celebrating and planning for tomorrow's extraordinary opportunity, I excused myself to the bathroom and finally allowed myself to process the surreal situation I had created. Tomorrow, I would reveal that the family failure they had just humiliated owned the company they respected most. The look on their faces would be worth every moment of tonight's performance. Christmas morning arrived gray and cold with snow beginning to fall as my family gathered at my parents' house for breakfast before the Tech Vault meeting. Despite the holiday conversation focused entirely on Madison's afternoon appointment and the potential implications for her career. I barely slept last night. Madison confessed, adjusting her carefully chosen navy suit. This meeting could change everything. You look perfect, my mother assured her. Professional but approachable. Exactly the impression you want to make on a potential business partner. Brandon straightened his tie and checked his watch. We should leave by 1:30 to ensure punctual arrival. First impressions matter enormously with successful entrepreneurs. The family had decided to attend the meeting as a show of support for Madison, positioning themselves as evidence of RevTech's strong local connections and family values. Everyone wore their finest clothing and carried notebooks for taking detailed observations about Tech Vault's operations. Della, you're still planning to meet us at the bookstore? Uncle Harold asked. We'll need someone familiar with the neighborhood to help us navigate. I'll be there early to make sure everything is ready, I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. At 1:15, I watched from my bookstore window as my family's cars pulled up outside. Madison emerged, first followed by my parents, Brandon, Uncle Harold, Aunt Caroline, Jessica, and even Grandmother Rose, who had insisted on witnessing this historic moment despite her mobility challenges. I unlocked the front door and greeted them with the same meek demeanor I had maintained throughout the previous evening. Welcome to my workplace. The meeting location should be somewhere nearby. Madison looked around the bookstore with polite interest while the others examined the shelves and comfortable reading areas. This is charming, Della. Very cozy and welcoming. Tech Vault probably chose this neighborhood because of its authentic community atmosphere. Where exactly are we supposed to meet these executives? My father asked, checking his phone for the time. According to the address Sarah provided, it should be this exact building. Madison replied, consulting her email. 327 Oak Street, but I don't see any obvious entrance to technology facilities. I took a deep breath, knowing the moment had arrived to begin my revelation. Actually, there might be something you need to see. I walked to the back corner of the bookstore and pressed a concealed button hidden behind a row of classic literature volumes. A section of the bookshelf swung inward, revealing a modern glass door leading to a sophisticated office space beyond. What is that? Jessica gasped. Executive offices, I replied, simply stepping through the hidden entrance. The family followed me into a sleek conference room furnished with cutting-edge technology, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, and walls displaying Tech Vault Industries awards and certifications. A massive curved desk dominated the far end of the space with multiple computer monitors showing real-time business analytics and market data. This is incredible, Brandon whispered, staring at the sophisticated setup. Tech Vault built executive facilities behind a bookstore facade. Brilliant security strategy. Madison approached the desk area cautiously as if entering sacred space. The attention to detail is extraordinary. This office probably cost more than most people's houses. I moved behind the executive desk and activated the main computer system. Multiple screens illuminated, displaying Tech Vault Industries dashboards, financial reports, and operational summaries. The family gathered around, mesmerized by the scope and complexity of the data flowing across the monitors. Della, we should probably wait outside, my mother said nervously. This is private corporate space and we don't want to interfere with important business equipment. Actually, I said, settling into the leather executive chair. "I think it's time we talked." Something in my tone made them all turn to look at me directly. For the first time in years, I had their complete attention. "I am the Tech Vault Industries founder and CEO you've been researching and admiring," I announced calmly. "This is my company, my office, and my meeting with Madison." The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds as they processed my words. Madison was the first to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's impossible." I opened my laptop and displayed Tech Vault's incorporation documents showing my name as founder and primary shareholder. Then I pulled up bank statements reflecting the company's assets and my personal wealth, followed by business licenses and regulatory filings dating back 8 years. Della Chen Morrison. I read from the legal documents. Founder and CEO, Tech Vault Industries. Personal net worth approximately $1.4 billion as of December 24, 2024. Uncle Harold collapsed into a nearby chair, staring at the evidence spread across the desk. "This has to be some kind of joke or misunderstanding." "No joke." I replied, accessing my executive calendar and showing them months of scheduled meetings with Fortune 500 companies, technology industry leaders, and government officials. I've been running Tech Vault Industries since I was 24 years old. Madison's face cycled through confusion, disbelief, and dawning horror as the implications became clear. "You've been lying to us for years." "I haven't lied about anything," I corrected. "I own the bookstore where I work, along with several other businesses. I've simply never corrected your assumptions about my success or financial situation." My father stared at the computer screens displaying real-time revenue streams and market analytics. "Why would you let us believe you were struggling financially?" "Because I wanted to see how you treated someone you perceived as having no money or social status," I explained. "Last night's intervention demonstrated exactly the kind of people you really are." Aunt Caroline found her voice. "But you acted so grateful for our help and suggestions." "I was curious to see how far you'd go with your condescending charity," I replied. "The employment applications, the budget planning books, Madison's offer to hire me as her minimum wage assistant, it was all quite revealing." Brandon pulled out his phone and began frantically Googling my name combined with Tech Vault Industries. Within moments, he found business articles featuring my company and achievements, though most photos showed me from a distance or in groups where individual identification was difficult. "Here," he said, showing Madison a blurry image from a technology conference. "This woman presenting the keynote speech on innovation leadership. It's definitely Della." Madison grabbed the phone and studied the photo, comparing it to me sitting behind the executive desk. The evidence was undeniable, but she continued shaking her head in denial. "This doesn't make sense," she insisted. "Successful entrepreneurs don't hide in bookstores pretending to be failures." "I wasn't pretending to be anything," I said. "You decided I was a failure and treated me accordingly. I simply didn't correct your assumptions." Jessica finally found her voice. "How long have you known about RevTech's contract proposal?" "I've been personally reviewing your partnership application for 6 weeks," I admitted. "Your initial presentation was impressive, but I always investigate potential partners thoroughly, including their personal relationships and character." The family exchanged horrified glances as they realized the implications. Everything they had said and done in my presence had been observed and potentially reported to the very person Madison was trying to impress. "You've been spying on us," Madison accused. "I've been getting to know the sister who wants to partner with my company," I corrected. Character assessment is a crucial component of business relationship evaluation. Uncle Harold looked around the sophisticated office space with new understanding. All those questions Tech Vault's representatives asked about company culture and employee treatment, that was you evaluating RevTech's values. "Exactly. I don't partner with people who lack integrity or treat others poorly." Madison's phone suddenly rang and she answered automatically before realizing the caller ID showed Tech Vault Industries. "Hello." "Madison, this is Sarah Chen from Tech Vault," came the familiar voice through the speaker. I'm calling to let you know that our CEO has completed her evaluation of the RevTech partnership proposal. Unfortunately, after reviewing all available information, she's decided to decline the contract. Madison's face went white. But why? I thought the meeting went well. The CEO was particularly concerned about character compatibility and RevTech's approach to family relationships and employee development. TechVault Industries prioritizes partners who demonstrate consistent respect for others, regardless of their perceived social or economic status. The phone call ended, leaving Madison staring at her device in shock. Around the conference table, my family began to understand that their behavior had been documented and evaluated by the very person they had been trying to impress. "You destroyed my career," Madison whispered. "You destroyed your own career," I replied firmly. "I simply observed how you treat people when you think they can't affect your success. TechVault Industries doesn't work with companies that lack basic human decency." The silence in my office stretched uncomfortably as my family grappled with the complete reversal of everything they thought they understood about our relationships and my place in the world. Madison remained frozen in her chair, staring at her phone as if Sarah's call might somehow reverse itself. "I need to understand something," my father finally said, his voice hollow. "If you've been this successful for years, why didn't you tell us?" I leaned back in my executive chair, considering how to explain years of accumulated frustration and disappointment. I tried, actually, multiple times. "Do you remember 3 years ago when I mentioned expanding my business operations? You assumed I meant adding a coffee bar to the bookstore." "That was different," my mother protested weakly. "Was it what about when I talked about my investment portfolio and Uncle Harold laughed and said I probably had $50 in a savings account? Or when I mentioned traveling to technology conferences and Jessica assumed I was attending as some kind of vendor?" Aunt Caroline shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "We thought you were being optimistic about small business growth." "You thought I was delusional," I corrected. "Every time I shared good news or mentioned professional achievements, someone in this family found a way to diminish or dismiss what I was saying. Eventually, I stopped trying to share anything meaningful about my actual life." Brandon cleared his throat nervously. "But surely you could have been more direct about your success." "Like Madison was direct about hers?" I asked, pointedly. "She announced every promotion, every salary increase, every professional achievement. You celebrated each milestone with enthusiasm and pride. When I shared similar information, you treated it like fantasy or delusion." Uncle Harold looked around the sophisticated office space, finally beginning to grasp the magnitude of what he was seeing. "This represents years of work and enormous financial investment. You built all of this while we thought you were barely getting by." "I built this while you actively discouraged me from sharing my achievements," I clarified. "There's a difference between privacy and being systematically ignored." Madison suddenly looked up from her phone, her expression shifting from shock to anger. "You deliberately sabotaged my career out of some petty family resentment." "I evaluated a business partnership based on character and integrity," I replied calmly. "The fact that you failed that evaluation reflects your choices, not mine." "What choices?" Madison demanded. "I've worked incredibly hard to build my career." "You worked hard to advance yourself while treating other people poorly," I said. "Last night, you offered me a minimum wage job as your personal assistant. You suggested I should be grateful for the opportunity to serve you. You announced that your baby would inherit everything worthwhile in the family because I hadn't contributed to your definition of success." The words hung in the air as Madison realized how her statement sounded when repeated back to her. Around the table, other family members began shifting uncomfortably as they remembered their own contributions to the previous evening's intervention. "We were trying to help you," Grandmother Rose said quietly. "You were trying to make yourselves feel superior." I replied, though my tone remained gentle when addressing her. "Helping would involve asking what I needed or wanted. Instead, you decided what my problems were and imposed your solutions without consulting me." My father rubbed his temples, looking older than he had the night before. What happens now? How do we move forward from this? That depends on whether you're capable of treating me with the same respect you showed Madison when you believed she was successful, I said. Last night proved that your family affection is conditional on perceived social status. Jessica found her voice again. But we love you, Della. We've always loved you. You love the idea of me fitting into your definition of acceptable family roles, I corrected. You were perfectly willing to humiliate me publicly and plan my entire future without my input because you believed I was powerless to resist. Can you forgive us? My mother asked, tears beginning to form in her eyes. I studied her face, looking for genuine remorse rather than simply regret at being caught in their cruelty. Forgiveness requires acknowledgement of what actually happened and commitment to different behavior going forward. What would that look like? Uncle Harold asked. It means treating people with dignity regardless of their job titles, bank account balances, or social status, I explained. It means recognizing that worth isn't determined by salary or professional achievements. Brandon had been unusually quiet since the revelation, but now he spoke up hesitantly. About those networking opportunities I mentioned last night. Were completely inappropriate, I finished. Your suggestions had nothing to do with professional development and everything to do with exploiting someone you perceived as vulnerable and grateful. His face reddened as he realized his behavior had been observed and evaluated by someone with the resources to hold him accountable. I apologize. That was wrong of me. Apologies are meaningful when they're followed by changed behavior, I replied. Madison finally looked up from her phone, her anger beginning to transform into something approaching understanding. I don't know how to process this. Everything I thought I knew about our family dynamics was wrong. Not wrong, I corrected, just incomplete. You knew the family dynamics perfectly well. You simply didn't realize that the sister you were treating poorly had the power to affect your professional aspirations. Will you reconsider the RevTech partnership? She asked quietly. I considered the question carefully. TechVault Industries partners with companies that demonstrate consistent ethical behavior and respect for others. If RevTech can prove that commitment over time, future opportunities might be possible. How would we prove that? Start with how you treat your current employees, especially the ones in junior positions, I suggested. Then examine how you interact with service workers, vendors, and anyone else who can immediately benefit your career advancement. Aunt Caroline leaned forward. What about the rest of us? How do we rebuild relationships with you? The same way you build any healthy relationship, I replied, through consistent respectful behavior over time. Demonstrate that you value me as a person, rather than as someone who might be useful to your own goals. My father looked around the office again, taking in the evidence of success they had completely missed. We failed you as a family, completely and thoroughly. You failed to see me clearly, I agreed. But failure doesn't have to be permanent if you're willing to learn from it. Grandmother Rose struggled to stand with her cane, then slowly walked around the desk to where I sat. I'm ashamed of how we treated you last night. You deserved better from all of us, but especially from me. Her apology carried weight because it came without excuses or attempts to minimize the harm they had caused. I stood and embraced her carefully, appreciating her willingness to acknowledge the truth without deflection. Thank you for saying that, I replied. It means more than you know. Over the next hour, we continued talking through years of accumulated misunderstandings and missed opportunities for genuine connection. Some family members, like Grandmother Rose and my father, seemed genuinely committed to rebuilding our relationships on healthier foundations. Others, particularly Jessica and Uncle Harold, appeared more concerned about potential financial opportunities than actual family reconciliation. Madison sat quietly for most of the conversation, processing the complete upheaval of her worldview. Finally, she spoke up again. I need to apologize for more than just last night, she said slowly. I've spent years competing with you instead of supporting you. I thought your lack of obvious success made my achievements look better by comparison. Success isn't a zero-sum game, I replied. Your achievements don't become less meaningful because other people also succeed. I know that now, she said, but I didn't know it then, and I let that ignorance damage our relationship. As Christmas Day afternoon progressed, we began the difficult work of rebuilding family connections based on honesty rather than assumptions. Some relationships would recover more easily than others, but the conversation had established a foundation for authentic connection rather than the performative dynamics that had dominated our interactions for years. There's something else you should know, I said as the family prepared to leave. The literacy programs and community investments you read about last night. They include funding for local educational initiatives, job training programs, and small business development grants. You've been helping the community anonymously, my mother realized. I've been investing in the place I call home, I corrected. Success means nothing if it doesn't contribute to something larger than personal achievement. Madison looked thoughtful. That's why TechVault's representatives ask so many questions about community involvement during our negotiations. Exactly. I partner with organizations that share my commitment to lifting others up rather than stepping on them to climb higher. As they gathered their coats and prepared to return to their Christmas celebrations, the family dynamics had shifted dramatically from the evening before. Instead of treating me as a charity case requiring their intervention, they now approached me with the kind of respect they had always shown Madison's achievements. But more importantly, they had begun to understand that true success involves how you treat others when you believe they can't affect your life, not just how you perform when you're trying to impress someone powerful. Walking them to the door, I reflected on the strange satisfaction of watching people confront the consequences of their own character choices. Madison had lost a professional opportunity not because I was vindictive, but because she had revealed values incompatible with ethical business partnership. The evening had taught me something valuable too, that I had more power than I realized to demand better treatment from people who claimed to love me. Setting boundaries and maintaining standards wasn't cruel. It was necessary for healthy relationships. As I locked the bookstore and returned to my office, I felt lighter than I had in years. The truth was finally visible, and whatever relationships survived this revelation would be built on solid foundations rather than false assumptions. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the opportunity to see themselves clearly and choose who they want to become next. Before you go, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who treated you differently based on your perceived success or status? How do you think people should handle situations where family members show their true character during difficult times? Please share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video if you found Della's story meaningful. Subscribe for more stories about family dynamics, personal growth, and finding your strength in challenging relationships. Share this with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by other people's opinions. Thank you for listening to Della's Journey, and I hope your holidays are filled with genuine love and respect from the people who matter most in your life.